No?
No, we don't. We know the original George was a gentleman, and as I say, always dressed as a gentleman, didn't matter what job he had.
He probably went to school up at Penrith.
But he was in England, so he probably would have the...
Oh, the original George.
Yes.
No, we don't. We can't go back farther than him. See, we didn't know him at all. And we only had what the aunties
Yes, what they've told us.
Trying to think. Kimberley mines, that's the mine I was
Which?
Kimberley mines.
Kimberley mines.
That's Africa. Where those diamonds came from.
What about George's son, George? Do you know about his education?
We don't know where he was educated. Probably up Penrith way. They lived at Emu Plains.
I think he had a public school education. He was, and I think probably educated himself. He used to be a reader. And but of course he had to work hard, as you could imagine. He has 12 children. 2 of them died. He had twins. Do you know we've had twins both sides of the family?
Really?
At the same generation. And there's never been twins in our family that we know of since.
Gosh, just stopped.
Usually they come out.
Yes, they come out somewhere, but they haven't.
Never has.
Oops. I don't like the sound of that.
But anyway, see, Grandma Moon, there were twins in her family. She had twin sisters. And Grandma...
Austin had...
Grandma Austin had twin girls.
Goodness.
And they died as very young.
Well, now, Grandpa Moon died at 33. And they'd had 8 children, but 4 of them died.
Poor woman.
Because they did those days. One was an accident. They must have been very comfortably off at that time because they had nurse girls for the children and all that sort of thing. And this was a boy. And he was a toddler, running around. And well, he was crawling around. Anyway, the nurse girl had him out and she put him on the grass. And she brought him home and said he'd had a fit, but didn't tell Grandma what had happened.
Oh, she was flirting with one of the soldiers.
Yes.
You know, the Times.
Oh, yes.
And she wasn't watching the baby properly.
And he'd got grass stuck in his throat. If she had only told them, they could have saved the child, but they didn't.
But they had no idea what killed him till the soldier, I think it was. And he said that they got the grass out of the baby's throat. And that's the first they knew of what had killed the baby. She was frightened to mention it, you see.
What happened to her after that? What happened to her?
I don't know. I don't know.
What about Henry? His education?
My father?
I suppose it would be. Yes,
well,
right,
he was educated at Burwood Public School.
Burwood Public. Is that high school or is it primary public?
No.
Those
days they didn't.
They didn't have those things there. They were quite different. And it was his uncle who was headmaster. And Father he'd get up and help his father milk the cows. And then Grandma would have his lunch ready and he walked. And many a time he had to run all the way if he was late. And all the way from Everleigh Workshops to Burwood to school.
Where's Everleigh Workshops exactly?
You know,
just before,
the train
just after Redfern.
Really? The key?
Between Redfern and Sydney.
You had a dairy farm there?
Yes.
Amazing. Gosh.
That's where the dairy farm was.
And what about my dad's father, George? Do you know anything about his education?
Yeah, he was educated at Newington.
He was at Newington. So Dad followed it.
Yeah, Newington.
That's right.
Uncle Arthur was Newington. Your father was Newington.
Uncle Hartley was
Uncle
Newington.
Hartley was Newington, and Barry was Newington. They all went to Newington. They were all sent there mainly because of Mother's father, you see, being the first builder. That was mainly. Mother wanted our boys sent there because of her father being the first builder.
Because he died before it was finished.
Were there any university students?
Uncle Hartley and who else?
Uncle Hartley Graham. He was Newton.
Oh, Graham.
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
a university student.
Judith.
Judith.
You don't know Judith, do you?
And
She was a
Jennifer.
painter, wasn't she, Judith?
Mm-hmm.
But she
That's
got her
her
BA and
wedding
honours,
Oh,
and she was the one, the painter.
mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, she's got a very big job. She's still working even though she's married. She it's an editing job, an apprentice job with the government.
Her wedding. She didn't wear a veil, and that's Graham. Warren. We call him Graham. Her husband. She and her husband. The reception was held up at a friend's place.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice. Where are they living now?
Manly.
Manly.
Ah.
Judith had a flat there with a couple of girl friends.
But her husband is a very clever man too, and they're both very clever photographers.
Oh, wow.
And but Judith's got this job. She's an editor of a paper, and something to do with agriculture. And not only that, she not only edits it, she writes a lot of the articles, and she does quite a lot of the printing. She knows all about printing.
You don't know
She's
the
done.
name of it? It's a new,
It's
new
in
paper?
it's in Phillip Street, the
Oh, good.
building.
Jennifer went to the university too.
Who?
Jennifer.
Oh yes, Jennifer.
Hartley's youngest daughter.
There was something about Auntie B mentioned something about his schizophrenia.
Oh,
in the
that was
hospital.
John. That was Neville's brother. Yes,
Neville's brother.
I'll show you Neville.
Mm.
He was what they call a schizophrenic. It's a double personality. It's an illness, really. They can't help it. But he died of a coronary in the end.
What age?
Because, how old was John?
He wasn't very old.
He'd be about 40, wouldn't he?
I think I don't know whether he would be that
No,
old.
may not have been 40. He was only young.
Anyway, he married twice. Neville was one of his brothers, his brother.
His youngest brother. And then there's Harry.
And then there was Harry. Well, there was nothing like that with either
Oh,
of them.
no.
It was only with John.
John.
But John had a son by his first wife, and
A son by a second.
then a son
And
by the
he
second.
is now in the Mercantile Mutual. He's the only representative of the family in the Mercantile Mutual.
There's still someone there. Even,
He's there.
So John had two sons, did he?
No, yes.
Yes.
Before he died.
Yes.
Well, obviously.
But not by the same wife. He had two wives.
We don't know anything about the other one. We never see his wife married, his widow married again, and we know we've never seen them for years and years and years.
What was his name again? Neville, or John? What was his last name?
John Austin.
Austin.
See,
Now he was father's brother's son, and the woman that he married was a very, very fine-looking woman, but
She had
She
dreadful
was-
temper.
shocking temper. We always think that John's trouble might have come from her family. She had one of the worst tempers I've ever seen in any woman,
Really?
and yet she was a very fine-looking
Yes.
woman.
Oh, yeah.
Her-
Happens, doesn't it?
Oh, she had
I've got all the wedding photographs there. I'll show you sometime. But she's had a very hard look about her now.
very hard man.
But she was a very fine-looking woman. That's
Ought to be in some of Mother's diaries if I could find them. And Mother was there, and he'd had pneumonia, and they knew he couldn't pull through because they didn't know then about they can save the people with pneumonia now with penicillin and that sort of thing, but that wasn't known in Grandfather's time. And she said she went to see him this day, and he couldn't speak to her. But he did manage a smile, and then his eyes went to the text, and he looked back at her and gave a smile, showing that, that he's...
That's all right.
But he was a very, very fine man.
You don't smoke, do you, John?
No,
I'm glad you don't.
it's too
Yes, you're a
expensive.
very wise man.
If you don't start, you know.
You don't want to.
Noel, George was a teetotaler.
Yes, that was our grandfather, my grandfather. And your great-great-grandfather.
Is that because, I think Nana said something about his father being, he's not an alcoholic, a drunkard. Do you know anything about that?
Whose father?
His, George's father. George, your grandfather.
Yes, I do.
He did have a bit of a failing.
He did have a failing that way. And that's why I think, I don't know, that may be why he came out to Australia, I don't know. But he did have that failing. And probably that was why my grandfather, George Austin, never touched it. Never touched it. Although he had his father living with him for ages afterwards, and I think in his latter life he didn't touch it from what I can gather. But still, he probably remembered the early life, and he never
because one time
touched it.
he was coming home from work and he had contracted flu, and he was so ill that he was sort of reeling.
Oh no, that's
Father's father.
no, that was our George.
No, it was Grandpa Austin. And two of his workmates were coming behind, and one of them said, "That's the first time I've ever seen George Austin drunk." He said, "George Austin's not drunk." He said, "I happen to know he never touches it." And he was so ill that he just was, couldn't...
Well, the same thing happened with, only it was the time of the dreadful flu with our George. When you were on the mountains, you didn't know anything about it. When they got that awful flu, and I was home looking after them.
The 1920?
Something about then. It was a shocking flu. And I was home looking after Father and the boys, you see, and the others, it was school holidays, and they'd gone on to the mountains. And we had a cottage then at Lura. And George was working with Father, and so was Jum.
Near Mount Wilson?
No, it's different. You go out,
Well, it's not Mount Victoria.
Millgate. Son, that's the one Wesley's father.
Oh, yes.
And that's Aunt Mary Demon. She was Grandma
second
Moon's
eldest
sister.
girl, that's right.
Grandma Moon's sister. And that's Uncle Jim, and that's Auntie Sarah that was related to the Coxes. And that's your grandfather. And there, that's your father. That's Uncle Hartley as a boy, and that's your grandfather and your great-grandfather. That's Wesley.
That's the one that's the professor.
Oh, yes. In English?
He's only a young
He's
man.
coming back from a trip. He went to Oxford.
What's his background? Do you know? What did he do what did he do at university and things like that?
Mostly English literature.
Yes. And he had the chair.
But he is of the world's. He knows more about now. Wait a minute. What's that poet's name? And he wrote sermons and things like that.
Not Eliot.
Born or something like that.
Not Eliot. T.S. Eliot.
Anyway, he got his a special degree for treatise, that's what they call it, that he wrote on this man's life and his work and all that at Oxford.
No, he went to Oxford.
Oh,
That's
yes,
where he
he
was
went
educated.
to Oxford.
Gosh. What was his father?
His father was Uncle Jim, who was my grandmother's brother.
Yeah.
What did Uncle Jim do up there? I can't remember what he was.
Nothing very big of it.
No, he wasn't. As a matter of fact, we've never had very wealthy people in our family at all. They've been comfortable. I don't think any of them have been, that I know, terribly poor, but they just comfortable, but never wealthy.
There was money left in Chancery from one of
Oh,
our
yes.
distant relatives, but Uncle Jim wasn't interested. going home to claim it, and Grandma couldn't.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford to, and she had too much on her plate. She had 4 daughters, so as far it's still there.